Hey, we're here. What is going on? What is going on, brother? I feel like I'm far
What's
away
happening,
from.
man?
I'm doing excellent, brother. Let me see if I could bring myself in just a little bit. I know I haven't stood in a while, but I thought this episode was the one where I just need to stand up a little bit. Let me see. Oh, and I'm going.
Stand
Let me bring
worthy.
it down a little bit, guys. Bear with me while I'm while I'm doing this. I want to let me see. Okay, there we go. I want to express my apologies for those of you that were commenting last time and engaging. Tara, I remember you were there. Tanya, you were there as well. So if you're here again, my apologies that I wasn't able to check in. We did pre-record it. Like this one will be pre-recorded. However, I said, I'm gonna make sure that I can at least listen or watch while it's going on. And if anyone wants to comment, engage with it, whatever it is, please put your stuff in there and I'll do my best to answer any questions. And I think, especially with the topic that we're leading into, this series, this this building a man series. And when I say man, I also mean, woman is a part of that as well. So we'll probably get into that a little bit. However, naturally, we're going to give it from our perspectives. I would advise, this is the one time that I'm going to advise something, is that you bring your, after this is going to be more so information, is that you bring your whole minds to this. I think it's important for all of us to be open to this conversation. I think if we were open to this conversation, we bring our whole minds to this conversation, that you're going to get a lot out of it, right? You can always go back and do your own research and put it against whatever it is that you want to put it against into. We're not here to tell you to do anything. One thing that I've learned is that I'm not here to control anybody's thoughts, actions, or whatever, but I am here to give information as I'm inspired to do so. So take with it what you want. There might be possible times when you, me, my brother from another mother. I didn't even do the introductions. I just jumped right into it. Uh, where parts of us get cued and triggered because this could be a deep topic for some of us, right? Like so, and it's an important topic. So anytime things are important, deep, things that we expound upon, things that we're like, oh, that's not what I heard, and that's totally fine. Just realize that you are having this thought. That's what I do. I realize that I'm having this thought. There's something here that I'm resisting, and rightfully so, you know, if that's the case. However, if you bring your whole minds to it, I'm sure that you're going to get a lot out of this, just like I am. I'm here for it, brother. So that's my spiel. Of course, I'm Michael Seville, your real estate guy here in Palm Beach County, and of course, on the other side of the screen, we got my brother from another mother, the incomparable Joel Simmons of the Tenacity Foundation. I said all that. How are you, brother?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. I love that, what you just brought to the table. I love the introduction. I love the setup. It's a deeper conversation than what I can't say it's a deeper conversation than what we
I can't
normally
say
have. I think that we generally go to a level that satisfies us, and at many points and times we actually go a little bit above ourselves, and we have to take a pause and to think about what was said. For instance, you said something to me just a few moments ago when we were behind the stage, and I still am thinking about that even to this very moment. Then you brought it back up inside of this show. So I'm loving that. I enjoy that because it's all about growth.
Hey,
It's all
man.
about growth. I'm, I'm thinking about how you were looking at the banners inside of our studio, and how the banners, though they've been changed multiple times over the course of the last 2.5 years, have relatively maintained the same words and definitions. There's consistency in that. I believe that it shows that we are looking to grow. When I look and I see the topics that we have spoken about, I see that they are all involving and revolving around the same categories of life. But the content, I think, has become more focused and sometimes has become that there's more evidence that the things that we discuss have been researched at a higher level or even at a new level because we've grown,
Yeah.
and some of the introspective had to grow with us. And I think that is something that we all ought to keep in mind as we dive into this discussion about what it takes for a man to become a man from the ground up. I think that that is
From the
really
ground up.
important, whether it's a man or whether it's a human. I think that this is very important because if you look back 2.5 years ago, one of the subjects that we landed on, that we grounded ourselves in, was being grounded as a
Hmm.
man, being grounded as an individual, having and making sure that the foundation that we pour for ourselves, and as we grow and we end up having children, the foundation that we pour for those that don't have the ability to pour their own foundation. Because
Right.
as a child, your parents got to pour that foundation. But as
Right.
an adult, you can break the foundation and start all over. So there are no excuses and no victims. The minute you realize you are your own, you become your own being. I am who I am. Once
Hmm.
you have that realization, you have the power to take a jackhammer to your own foundation. You have the power to rip your own roof off, take your walls down, throw out all of your furniture, and start from scratch. You have that power and that ability. But as long as we stay victims, we are disabled from the very tools that are God given to us. And I think that that's where we start this entire program with. So I'm ready. Buckle
You're
up.
that, that brother is revved up. He's speaking to empowerment. This, even just in that context of it, this self pity. I'm not saying that we don't validate these different feelings. Like, you're feeling, if you have a feeling of self pity, etc. I would call it out. I would say it. It's times when I sit I sit down and I say, listen, I'm gonna take time to validate this feeling of pity for myself. I want to validate that. The thing is, I don't want to stay there. I want to mature, the growth that the brother speaks about. Not only the growing, maturing. It makes no sense for us to get to a certain age and think that it's stopped. When you really think about it, we were just growing. I heard a brother say recently that you don't really even understand life until you hit 70 years old. So with that in mind, I mean, that's something that we can look at, say, okay, when we hit 70, that's when we really can. Well, you can take advantage of it now, but this just shows you that we should continuously grow and mature, and above all, like the brother mentioned, is to empower ourselves. I would add another caveat, because this is the introduction. We're going to be doing this over the next couple of weeks. I, for whatever reason, something in my mind said it's an 8-week series. I don't know why, but we'll see exactly how far we take this. Um, so we're kind of we kind of want to set the groundwork for it once again, because there's a lot of things that we'll probably talk about that I call it cue. Some people call it trigger. And I would advise us at that time to say, man, like the brother said, you got, sometimes you got to take the walls down, you got to take the roof down, and understand your foundation. So there's times when you can say, I don't know. I don't know is probably one of the most underused phrase, but at the same time, one of the most powerful phrases that I have implemented within my life. I heard a mentor tell me once, he said, if you're not saying I don't know at least 5 times in the course of your business, then you really have to question what it is that you're doing. Because with all the information that's available, like I spoke before, me being in real estate, all the information that's available, I'm often just scratching the surface of it, and I've been doing it for a long time. My mentor Jim, he'll be 87 this month, and he said, "Listen, Mike, I'm still learning some of the stuff. I think he's really humble. I think he's forgotten some of the stuff, and he's just remembering. However, he's still learning things in real estate. How much more is there when we're actually talking about becoming a man and being a man within life? That's that you can essentially be studying that forever. So at times when you feel a certain kind of way, just say, hey, I don't know, let me, this causes for deeper research. And I think what we well, I think the brother would also agree, is that these are just things for us to think about, kind of planting a seed in your mind to say, man, I need to think about this, what's going on, and how does it really, for yourself, how does it relate to me? What do you say, brother? You ready?
I, we're already in it. So
Yeah.
we are there. One of the
Yeah.
topics that I definitely believe that we're going to be covering, and Mike
Hmm.
alluded to it just right now, is especially in the bringing up of a youth as a
Right.
father. Once again, he mentioned the male perspective. It's not to say that a woman can't take some of this and utilize it, because what I have learned is that knowledge transcends. That's what I've learned. Knowledge is not power, it's correctly activating the knowledge. It's the use of knowledge that becomes so powerful. Just knowledge, just knowledge by itself is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. How do I know? Because there are libraries filled with knowledge that people don't even access. And when they don't access it, they have no power to do anything. It's like when the brother's talking about real estate. You get into the real estate game and you have no idea what you're doing, but there's a library with 1,000 books on real estate with people who have tried and proven how the system works. And all you have to do is go in there, access the knowledge, and utilize it. And most likely, you can weather the storms and make it through after you've heard so many testimonies. You hear 1,000 testimonies and you actually apply those things that stick from book to book to book to book, I think that you'll be able to figure it out. But if you just decide, I watched a video, I heard someone talking about it at the water cooler, my cousin just got into it, I think that I will. I think at that point in time, that's where we have a lot of failures. And what I mean by failures is people who went out, did something, it didn't work, and they gave up. That's what I mean by failures.
Yeah.
So, nonetheless, a few things. Mike, I don't know. That's huge. It's not where I wanted to start, but I can't go beyond that.
Right.
I cannot go beyond I don't know. Why? Because when we talk about raising a child up, I must think for myself. I'm not a giraffe. I'm not a zebra. What is he talking about? I'm saying that I'm not a live birth animal that gets out and within 60 to 120 seconds, I learn how to walk. I learn how to run. I know where to get my food from. I know that there's something dangerous out there. I know where my herd is. No. When I was born, I knew nothing. Everything I needed to learn, everything, in order for me to reach a mature level. A mature level. To be mature, it signifies the quality or the state of being mature. It basically means that I've become emotionally mature, intellectually mature. I've become, in my behavior, the aspects of the way that I act have become mature, which means what? It means that I am manifesting some type of behavior that shows that I am responsible for the things that I'm doing inside of my life. And I know that I'm responsible. I'm operating in a field of knowing that what I am doing is either beneficial or non-beneficial, which for me conversely means I have become mature. So whether it, like Mike alluded again, whether it is actually at the age of 70 or whether it's much like nowadays for Mike and I to be in our 40s and to hit a level of maturity that maybe people 20 years ago or 40 years ago did not hit at this age, or maybe they did. And maybe 10 years ago they stopped because of generational gaps and the lack of certain influences, maybe whatever. There's a lot
Right.
of different ways that we can cut that cake. But the bottom line is that when I realize I don't know, I don't have a clue, then it leaves room for me to learn. And I think
Yeah.
that that is one of those things, those key indicators that we need to share with our children. It's
Yeah.
something that I'm sharing with my son, something I'm sharing with my daughter, something I'm sharing with my eldest daughter. And the experience that I've got over time and sharing these things. I was at probably share overload with my first daughter. I mean, I was there to teach her everything. And for me, it was not about me just sharing knowledge, it was about me teaching her how to make judgment calls. So I think that that may have been stressful for her when I look back, because as we say, hindsight is 2020. I look
Yeah.
back and I think about some of those conversations. So some of those things that I was preparing her for, being that the group that she was surrounded by may have been at a much more immature level, possibly. She didn't have siblings that were learning the same thing for 7 years. She had to entertain the same thing that her friends at school were entertaining, and they weren't in my circle. So I don't know what she was learning. I know what she
Right.
brought home, what she wanted. But when it came down to it, I watched how my second child and my third child adopted and adapted to the things that I was teaching. And it was a lot easier for them to accept. And I think that the environment that they were in was highly charged for them to accept what I gave. Not only that, but I think that I curated the way that I gave the information. So there was a drastic difference. This comes from experience.
Yeah. It's a as a first time parent, and so that's one of the things we'll be definitely be diving into, is the raising of kids. We definitely have the experience, going from what, Paul's 3 all the way up to 25, and I think I've actually been raising children since my brother, since I was 10 or 12. um and what's interesting about that is the first one, there was a want to control everything for me.
Mm.
There was this want to have control of it. So I definitely want to get into the topic as we go throughout this series of control and what that exactly means and entails to each and every one of us. And also as we go through this series, because we'll be doing this week by week. Eventually we're gonna put it all together and probably box it up and either give it away or sell it, whatever it is that we decide to do at the time, when the time comes. However, there's probably going to be some questions or some thoughts that you all are having in regards to this, and we want to have you engage with us. Hey, Mike, you spoke about this. What exactly did you mean? Joe, you spoke on parenting. Parenting. What does that mean? Uh, we like to know a little. We like to get a little bit more in depth in that, and then we can actually like really start to put it all together. And then, like I said, put it all and give that product. But we're definitely going to start with that. So you mentioned something else is about responsibility, brother, maturity and being responsible. And I kind of say with responsibility, it's response able. It's what I can control is the response to these to what happens to me. Like that's the control that you do have. So we'll talk about becoming a man and how that and what it relates to responsibility. You sent me something, brother. We spoke about the masculinity. So there's masculinity and there's femininity, and these two things they're not really gender specific, right? And it manifests as a gender. However, they're not gender specific. But what we've been seeing and what's been going on with these different roles and these different gender roles, I definitely think that's something that we can talk about that. And I'd also like to see us talk about the culture and subculture and how it affects our roles as becoming a better human. What do you think, brother?
I love it. I love it. I haven't done a lot of research on femininity. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I can say the word correctly, actually, as a matter of fact.
You
But
say it
nonetheless,
sounded great.
all right.
It
Well, I
it
appreciate
sounded fine.
that.
It sounded fine.
I appreciate that. You know, there's something about it when it comes to masculinity. There's definitely a lot when we discuss that about what exactly masculinity is. I did take the time to look more into it because so I've had a few conversations about masculinity, and I really want to dive into this
Yeah.
from a man's perspective. I really do. And that is because masculinity is one of those things I feel that men, let's say in my circle or in circles that I have been in, I feel as if this is something that they're looking for. They need to maintain being masculine. And I thought it was interesting. Let me share this with you. Okay. So I looked it up masculinity, the origin of masculinity, Latin, right? The Latin root of masculinity is masculinus or male. And it comes from masculus or worthy of a male. Soon as I got to that, Mike, I was like, that's when my brain just exploded right there. Because what on earth? What do you mean worthy of a male? And this was my hang up because when I thought about masculinity before, I thought masculinity is a word that's made up for men by men. It's kind of like deodorant for men by men. Order your masculinity now. It's for men by men. And what does that mean? It means get a bottle of masculinity, prove you're a male to all men. So what is masculinity? So when I look this up and I find that the root word means worthy of a male, what does that mean? So I looked at the word worthy, and the word worthy means having or showing the qualities or abilities that merit recognition in a specified way. So when I think about masculinity, my definition of masculinity is that I have or I'm showing the qualities or abilities, the meritorious quality or abilities of recognition to be a male. What? I don't need that. So I want to dive into that thing because
I'm
I'm like,
excited about that.
I don't need somebody's badge to tell me I'm a man. I don't need that. I don't need a badge. If I got to go, there was a ride in Williamsburg, Busch Gardens. And it's the first time I ever saw this pin or this shirt. They got them all over the place. But we used to talk about this, you know, 30 years ago. We used to talk about this. And it was called the Big Bad Wolf. And after you got off the Big Bad Wolf, you had to get a shirt or a button that said, I survived the Big Bad Wolf. I rode the Big Bad. That's what you had to get. And it was a badge of honor. That's what it was. Similar to I voted. Not that I'm against voting or that I'm against the sticker. But after you vote, you get the sticker and you wear it as a badge of honor because it means that you voted. But didn't I vote without the sticker? Do I need the sticker to prove that I voted? No, I don't need the sticker. The sticker is there so that other people know that I voted. The badge from the Big Bad Wolf tells other people that I rode the ride. And the truth of the matter is, especially with the ride, is I can get the badge or the shirt without riding it. It didn't make me an actual participant in the ride. It just meant I bought the badge. That's it. So when it comes down to masculinity, I love this conversation. I want to go deep into this because I think that the conversation is really male versus masculinity, man versus masculinity. I think that diving into deeper into what exactly is a man? Who am I?
Yeah.
What makes me and you the same? Because I don't need a badge of masculinity. I don't need someone to tell me that the way that I walk, the way that I talk is worthy of me being called a male. Because by the definition of masculinity, a woman can show the exact same signs as a quote unquote male, whatever those signs are, and she can be called masculine. What on earth does that mean?
But and just go on your definition, brother. You know, what we're talking about, it's what I heard is that it's a being. It's a way of being. And that's kind of how it's defined. And I want us to make the distinction, and we're going to get into it because I think this is worthy of a conversation. Like this is a triggering and cueing conversation for people in regard, because no, you know, most women, you know, typical woman who wants to be a woman does not want to be called masculine, you know, and then most men don't want to be called feminine. However, there are energies, and these things are defined how we defined it as society. So we there's already a narrative. It's already defined by society what is determined to be feminine or masculine. It doesn't take away from a person being a biological male or being a biological female. So we have to make a distinction of what is gender specific biologically or what is energetically specific to certain ways of being. So I think it would behoove us, and we'll get into it. Like that's we can't get this thing done in an hour, guys. We just can't because it takes time for us to actually walk through this. And I'm coming from a place of, and this is what I had to learn within myself of patience, understanding, and compassion. Because I didn't just get this way. This is months, years, a lot of resources in coming to this, in coming to the place that we are. So it takes us time to get to where we want to get to. And so some people, and I just had a conversation with a brother recently when I kept saying, you know, what's going on with you is feminine, because there's especially in when you're in a relation with a, you know, man and a woman being in a relation with each other, there's certain masculine things that some people tend to expect, and really it's nature, and there's some things that the feminine female, excuse me, would want to expect a certain masculinity. However, we all have both of these different energies. We need to take a look back, and this is where we're going to go back and we're going to rebuild and we're going to get a complete understanding of it. We're going to say, well, if I was raised by a woman, and we see it, that men who are raised by women tend to have more feminine ways than a man that was raised with a man and a father in the household. That's why these dynamics are so important. However, in the past 40 to 60 years within America, these things have changed. This is why this makes this so important. I think this goes into something else that we're going to speak about, which is identity. We're going to see how we curate our identities, and it goes back to the question that the brother asked, who am I? And then we can get into the cognitive dissonance, where a lot of where we start to get away from what we think we are versus what we're actually putting out into the world. So when I see someone, and if I'm coming from a place of understanding, overall love, let's call it love. If I'm coming from a place of love, I can lovingly go to my brother and say, listen, brother, you're going through this issue or whatever. It's because you're coming off like this, and it's happened to me plenty of times. Gone to people, and I'm like, well, I'm just being blunt. Well, you can be as blunt as you want. If the person's not receiving it, then everything that you're doing is for naught. So there comes a time where we have to improve our skill set in regards to it. So we're going to go into identity. I think cognitive dissonance is going to be huge to it. Once again, coming with our whole minds in regards to this conversation. And if you do, because oftentimes I try to do it as much as possible. When I do come with my whole mind, and the other person is not, then I end up being the benefit of all this information and all this stuff that's being passed. It happens often. Brother, has someone ever came to you for help, but and support, and you gave them a wealth of information, and they left but they were so close to it that you ended up getting more from that interaction than the person who came to you for help? Has that ever occurred with you?
From my point of view, I believe it has.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
another point of view, I'm not sure, because maybe 3 years down the road, it rises back up and they get benefit. They could have been a slow growing seed. So I
Slow
hope that
processing.
people get a benefit. It could be a slow process, but I don't know, to be
I say
honest.
I say all that to say this, that I'm coming with an open mind. So I would hate for me to be the only one to benefit from these interactions. We taking the time to we're taking the time out to have these conversations, to have these interactions, to supply information as we see it. And that's why I love the engagement, because I get to get an entirely different perspective. It's hard for me to understand if I haven't heard it from somebody else. I try as I might. It's always good to have it from a different perspective. That's why I enjoy um our interactions, because if I come to it and I hear you, oh, okay, because we all have different experiences that we come with, and information, right? And so we're all just using that. So let's make sure that we come with a clear mind. I'm repeating that again. And I think ultimately this is going to be one of those things where we are curating. The brother used that word, and I love it. I've been using it for the last couple of months. And the brother said it, and it brought it back to my attention. Is this relationship um, with yourself? That's where the identity, where I hope to go with this identity thing. I know hope is not a strategy. However, I'm hoping that this relationship with yourself, and if you're willing to want to have that relationship with yourself, um, that is going to end up, if you do that and you build this to make it stronger and stronger, it's going to foster what I think is going to foster peace within you, because the more you understand yourself, the more one knows oneself, the more one can get closer uh to their creator. What you think, brother?
I love it. I love it. I want to step right in, right where you left off. Right where you left off. So, curating, creator, C to C. There was something that I thought, as we were speaking, you had made mention, and you were speaking, and all of a sudden it just hit me: narration, narrative. When you were talking about how sometimes people are groomed by their mothers. Sometimes young men are groomed by their mothers.
Yeah.
I was groomed by my mother. This was a challenge for me. It was a challenge for me. It was a challenge because up until very recently, I think that I still told the story from a different perspective. The story of how she wrapped me up and guided me along the pathway, when I believe that she did all she could do. And maybe, just maybe, this was God's plan for me to be who I am, rather than the lack mindset that I carried for such a long time, because my father was not there. which also makes it sound as if he didn't want to be there. And I don't necessarily know that he didn't want to be there, because I did have an opportunity to speak with him and he said he did want to be there. So there's a lot to say in that. It's a lot to say in that, especially if I'm giving my perspective and my perspective shadows him as a bad guy. How fair is that? I think perspective is perspective, opinion is opinion. And you need to take that with whatever grain of salt you want to take that with, because it really doesn't matter. As I had alluded to, or I plainly stated, I got to the point where another one's purpose is not my focus. Not concerned about it. Unless it is brought into my area, a realization is brought underneath my vision, it's underneath my umbrella, and now it is affecting me in some way, shape, or form, then at that point in time, that purpose means a lot to me. But until then, I'll sweep around my door, you sweep around yours. We'll all be okay if we do that and follow those rules. I don't need anybody peeping in my house to see how they can teach me how to groom my children or how to love my wife. But if I invite you into my house and I ask you the question, totally different. Totally different. Now I'm sharing my purpose, my vision, but I've gone off onto a tangent. So, curation to creator. Let me start with creator. Genesis 1:27. So God created, and I'll read it, mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female created he them. I don't want to dive in deep to that, because that conversation is extremely deep. And you'll probably see in some of my other videos, I said the exact same comment, but I don't want to dive into that because it's very deep and it's definitely going to take us away from where I believe we're headed. However, when God created man, he created him in his own image. And when God created man, he created man in his own image. God is a creator. So he created man to be creative. God had no problem with his identity. God didn't step out and ask somebody else, who am I? As a matter of fact, there came a time when man asked God, who shall I say sent me? And he said, I am that I am. So God was very okay with who he is. And I say who he is. I know that that's not proper English. So I bring up this second scripture, and it's in the book of Hebrews, and I'll read it. Hebrews 13:4. Now, for those of you all who have a problem with God being Jesus Christ, this may be one of those point in times where you just have to hear what I'm saying, and you can put it in your own thought process. Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ the same yesterday and today and forever. There's another scripture where it talks about him being the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the author and finisher of our faith. So what am I getting at? When I'm talking about narrative, as man, we were created to be like God. We're supposed to be what? He told us to do. This is the first commandments that we were ever given before they were even called commandments. Go forth, be fruitful, multiply, and take dominion. There's three things that we're supposed to do. Three things: fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. That's what you're supposed to do. That's it. Now, whether or not that stayed that way for a long time or not, I can tell you, but it's not here. It's another place. But those are the things that we're supposed to do. So when I think about me as a man, I should be, number one, creative, because God was creative. God also provided work. Said he worked 6 days and he rested on the seventh. So I should work. Those are attributes of God. I should do work because that's what God did. He worked. I should do that. I should be fruitful. That's what God did. God gave birth to the entire earth, to the heavens, the seas. He gave birth to every fish, every fowl of the air, every beast of the field. He gave birth to man. All of those things came out of his word. And before his word, nothing existed. So he was the father and the mother of all. God being the father and his word created it all. That's the mother right there, all in one. That's something right there.
Ain't it?
So now I have that. And then on top of it, he tells me, go out and do the same thing. Be fruitful, give birth, multiply, lots of birth, make more, and then have dominion. Reign over all of this. Be king. Let things come to you and you deal with it. So whatever it is, whether it was your mother who brought you up, your father, your cousin, your nephew, the streets, and I say your nephew because I'm the nephew of an uncle who I'm older than. These things happen. So whoever it is that is raising you, we don't hop out like giraffes and zebras, shake the fluids of the womb off of our backs, start walking, eat grass, start playing, and then drink from the paps and join the herd like we've been there all our life. That's not the way human beings are born. No, we are born fragile. We have no power over our neck, over our extremities. The first thing that we attempt to do is with all of our power, we attempt to lift our hands and our feet up, our extremities. They're the lightest piece of us. Some of us didn't even know how to open our mouth. There had to be a trigger. Mike used the word trigger. There had to be a trigger that happened. Sometimes the doctor had to pop the backside in order to trigger a response so that we would start to speak, so we will start making a noise. Animals instinctually do this. They get it like that. But as human beings, we must learn. So whatever the narrative is, and I believe that this will be one of the subjects, whatever the narrative was when we were born, all the way up until the point in time when we started to understand for ourselves right and wrong. Because once you understand right and wrong, I don't care who your parent is. I don't care who's bringing you up. You're writing your own story now. My son is 13 years old. Mike, your son is 14, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's writing his own story. They still adapt some of what we bring, but their mind brings them to this is when a child starts to press up against their parents. You know, let me see if they're going to let me go this far. Let me sit there, let me go. That's because they got their own mind and they believe they understand the boundaries of what's right and what's wrong. And now they're pushing up against those boundaries to see how far they can go. It takes that long before they get there. 12, 13, they're right in there. They're pushing up against those boundaries, sometimes a little earlier. So the narrative, what is the narrative that you tell yourself? What is the narrative I tell myself? What's the narrative that Mike tells himself? What is our own narrative? Because like he was mentioning the word triggers come because of our own personal narratives. There's really no reason for a trigger except we have told ourselves something.
Something.
We have bought some belief. We paid for it one day.
We did. And continue
and because of that, we now have a trigger. We have something that causes us to fly off the handle, causes us to lean back and think longer, causes us to pause, causes us to speak up, causes us to disagree, causes us to agree. All of these things come, it's the law of cause and effect. These things come through the law of cause and effect. These are triggers. Narration. What is the narrative from a male's perspective? For a man, what is the narrative? What you say, bro?
Man, that's deep. You got really deep with it. I don't know. And one thing, Paul, he's 3. Paul is starting to brush up against me already. So, we start a little bit early here in the Seville household.
Okay, I got you.
We start to question things out the woo. You know, I always have a joke about teenagers. I say, man, I knew everything until I hit 18. Then all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute, I don't know everything that I need to know.
Hey,
I hear
I just want to let everybody know, if they want to get a condo in Palm Beach, you can call up Paul Seville. The number is 888-888-8888.
put them to work. Put them to work.
He's ready.
Uncle Joel is putting them to work.
He's
Uh,
ready. 3 years old. He's ready to sell you your first condo. Don't worry about it.
People, what I hear in regards to this, 'cause there was a lot. There's a lot to unpack within that. Once again, for whatever my reason is 8. It might be 8. It might be 4. It might be 12. But this is going to be a series that we're going to go and we're going to continue on, and we're going to dive deep into these topics that we're talking about. Narrative. I for whatever reason, as I circled it, you said it. So that's why I held up the paper into the screen. I have narrative versus story. And so there's a narrative that we bought and we paid into, like the brother said. We want to empower each and every one of us to start to create our story. We're living it. So let's make sure that we create our story. And with us creating our story and looking at the narratives, we get to embrace our whole selves. That's all the great things and all the so-called mistakes and things that we take as regrets and all. There's no maybe, this is a part of it. And so when we start to bring all of this and align ourselves with this and saying, okay, now we get a chance to look at it from a new perspective, that may kind of bring down that trigger. If we can kind of look at certain things, you know, well, my mother said this and my father said this, but now as a man, I get to look at it from a different perspective. And guess what? I get to love, I get to forgive and love both of them. And that's just what it is, because my thought process on it is that apart from co-create you, they don't got to do nothing. So anything it is that they do for you, I'm going to be appreciative of it. Right? I'm not looking at, oh, you such and such inherited this and such father was around all the time. That's fine and dandy. That's their story. But the story I'm creating is saying that as long as my mother and my father got together and co-created me, yeah, I may have to work through some things because that's not the narrative that's supposed to happen, supposedly, that I took on this belief. However, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to forgive them. And then I'm telling you, once we start to work on this forgiveness thing, I think that's a whole episode within itself. We start to work on this forgiveness thing. We're going to realize that it's really about forgiving ourselves. And then once we start to forgive ourselves and we have that forgiveness within us, and we just use our parents as a conduit to get to that place. And then we start to give out this forgiveness lovingly and freely. And then we start from that forgiveness and that loving is going to start to come to trust in oneself. And then it's not even a question about worthiness anymore, because you can't weigh it. A baby doesn't come out the womb saying, am I worthy of? A baby just say, hey, feed me, change me, do what it is, because I'm here and I'm going to scream until it happens. So I found that worthiness, that's going to be related to the trust, that's going to be related to abandonment. A lot of these things happen early on in childhood. Cue it might cue/trigger you. I'm not going to use trigger anymore. I'm going to say it's going to cue you, but maybe I'm not going to say it. Never say never, but that's what it is. And then we can get to this loving conversation. And then what is like a loving man? I think that's an awesome conversation. A loving, compassionate, gentle, and kind man. What does that look like? And so we'll go through all these things as we go through these series. But I think this is going to be awesome. I honestly think this is going to change everything, because it's already made a change in me. As we were coming up, and I'll close with this, as we were getting closer and closer to the time to record this today, I just got more and more, I don't want to use the word excited, but I just got a little bit more peaceful. It just got more and more peaceful for us to have this conversation, because I think this is going to be the catalyst for a lot of change. And if it doesn't change you, I know it's going to change me. So I'm welcoming and I'm open into this conversation, brother. And I'm excited that we are going to be having it together. So that's that.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm very excited about this as well. I'm hoping that many people will jump on this and come along the ride with us. I know that we're going to be pre-recording this, so get on to Mike's Facebook or go on to his YouTube or get on to my YouTube and message us. Also, for all the men out there, if you do decide that you want to be a part of more conversations, please check us out. We're on
Yeah,
a group called The Gathering, and you all can be there. Mike is there with me. It's awesome. We're having a great conversation. Love to have you there. No judgments.
no judgments.
Listen, it's about grooming ourselves to be the best men that we possibly can be. And I think this is also something that should be taken, I want to say advantage, but I don't want that word to be taken the wrong way. But I guess you got to take it any which way you want to take it. But I think that women should take advantage of these next few weeks
Yeah,
because we're going to give a raw, unadulterated viewpoint of two men, the two of us right here, and our perspective. And who knows, maybe somebody else may show up. I don't want to leave that as a closed door. I don't know
right.
what will happen during the course of these next few weeks, but this may be a great opportunity for women who are trying to figure out men, who are trying to get inside the mindset of men so that they can pick a better male, a better mate for them, a better human being, a better man, a better husband for themselves, or who are just trying to pick the husband. I shouldn't say better, but are trying to pick their husband, and they're having that difficulty and they want to know what they're looking for and how to find it. Well, sometimes you have to look. I like to say it's like a coin. For every coin, there's an opposite. It's the law of cause and effect. They're just like the cause and effect. Wherever there's a cause, there is an effect. Wherever there's effect, there was a cause. Well, if God created us, if God created man in the image of God, male and female created he them, then there was always two, even if it was only one. Like I said, I don't want to get too deep into that, but there was always two from the beginning. That was the whole mindset, is that there needed to be a way for him to do exactly what it was that he was asking of him to do, which was to be fruitful and to multiply. And in order for that to happen, there needed to be the creative ability ingrained inside them. So if a woman really wants to understand what a man is like, she needs to speak with a man who is willing to share those things. But she also needs to be willing to accept those things without change or judgment. And the same way goes for a man.
That's big.
As men, we need to go and speak with women. And this is not about how we can lay that woman down or how that woman can lay that man down. It's not about that. If
Not
you
at
want to
all.
understand something, you actually have to dig into it. You have to
Yep.
ask the questions. You have to get the response, and you have to be okay. You have to accept what you receive. It's like if I were to go to school and my teacher was teaching me some subject and they were an expert at it, and they told me this means this, and I told them it does not. And whatever I give them is all based off of my own emotion without research, without me having dived into it like they have done, without me having taken the time to study, to show myself approved. Who am I to just haphazardly walk into a classroom and tell somebody about something that I know nothing about and expect for them to change their curriculum and to think and do and to teach another way simply because I showed up today? Now, you can take that with a grain of salt, but that applies to all people. Because any man that walks up to a woman and thinks that simply because he is,
He is him.
or any woman that walks up and simply thinks because she is,
Woo.
that's going to be the birth of discord right there.
I
Right
say you're
there.
gonna get. I say you're gonna get what you think you're asking for.
I like the way you said that.
You- yeah, you gonna get what you gonna get what you're looking for. It's gonna come. It's gonna come with something. But it's a word. It's a word. We get to add compassion. We get to add empathy. We get to add, above all, I think, love to the conversations. And I think this is gonna be dope. This is gonna be dope, man. Guys, let's leave them with something to think about. I think after each episode of this period, we can this could be something moving forward. Some questions that need to happen because this is not an overnight thing. Like you didn't get the wisdom that you have just because it would be nice sometimes if we just hear it the first time and all of a sudden we just sometimes this thing takes some implementing. You know what I mean? Like it's going to take some implementation. It's going to take some, and when I say implementation, some questions that we can ask ourselves. You don't even have to go out and necessarily do anything. It will help to do some things, but it would be great for us to ask ourselves some questions. What do you think, brother? I like when you said, "Who am I?" What are your thoughts?
Two things from me that I
Yeah,
would ask for you to do. One, for those of y'all who think that this conversation is fire and you want more of it, I would ask for you to DM us and to join the gathering. Join the gathering where we
that's
have
for males
more.
only, though.
It's for
Males
males
only.
only.
Yeah,
Ladies, you can't get in there. I am currently looking for a sister, a woman, to be able to start a female only group in the Tenacity Foundation. But at this time, we have one for men. So for men only, DM Mike or DM me, or just put it in the YouTube channel. You can make it wide open and say you want to join. I'll also include the link. We want men in this group that have this type of thought process going on in their mind, that love this type of content. So if you love this type of content, you should be in this group. The second thing is what Mike just said. Who am I? I challenge you to decide, or I challenge you to write down who you believe you are. And then to post not who you believe you are, but to post in either Mike's chat or my chat or both chats that you accomplished that task, that you got a journal and you wrote down, I believe I am ... fill in the blank. And this is a trust thing. And if a man can't trust himself, how can he trust another man? So I trust myself.
can't get what you don't got. You can't give what you don't got. Love you guys. I think it well said, well done. We're coming up on the hour. Appreciate you all. And we will see you either in the gathering if you decide to join, or we'll see you next week here at Community Beacon. We appreciate you all as we build out this series, man. Love you. See you next week.